Good evening, everyone. We're going to just give one more minute. It looks like we're going to have a packed house tonight for the grand rounds, which is going to talk about wellness and physician wellness and faculty wellness and fellows wellness. And we're going to just give our colleagues a minute to just settle down, log in, um, have a sip of tea or coffee, and enjoy the evening before we get started. Looks like we have a full quorum, a full house. There are close to about 50 plus people who have joined. And thank you very much for joining in today. And it looks like it's going to be a very important piece of discussion on the topic of physician wellness. And it seems like the cardiology grand rounds continues to remain very popular. And in the year 23-24, we are planning to also have the grand rounds being collectively presented across the health system on 3 or 4 occasions. More information about that will be forthcoming, and this will be for the academic year of 24, starting July 2024. And the list of the grand rounds are still present at the website. And for today's grand rounds CME credit, please go ahead and text 20397 to the number 888-816-4893 as an SMS message, provided you have an active profile in the Rutgers Cloud CME program. And if you are a physician and wanting to have an MOC credit, complete the step 1 and then use the room code future65 to the link shown above. And also this link is going to be made available subsequently. You can have this answered within 12 hours after completing the link, and the answers, if they are correct, will let you have your MOC point directly populate to your ABIM ID through your Cloud CME profile. So CME credit, MOC credit, remember, this is a free for everyone who's having an active profile in Rutgers Cloud CME. I'm going to go ahead and invite now Dr. Kamu Maganti, Section Chief of Non-Invasive Cardiology and Director of EchoLab at Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School and the University Hospital, to come forth and give an introduction to Dr. Sivram, who's our guest speaker.
It is my pleasure this evening to welcome Dr. Chitur Sivram. He is David Ross Boyd Professor in the Cardiovascular section, Department of Internal Medicine at University of Oklahoma. He is also currently the Vice Chief of Cardiovascular section for Education and Training, as well as Director of Cardiovascular Diseases Fellowship Training. He also serves as the Associate Dean for Continuing Professional Development at OU College of Medicine. He's a very well-known clinical cardiologist and, more importantly, a teacher with special interest in echocardiography as well as cardiac imaging. He did his medical school in Calicut in India and did his residency and cardiology fellowship at PGI Chandigarh, which is one of the most premier institutes in India. He then did additional training at University of Alberta and subsequently moved to Texas Tech University in Amarillo, and then made his final move to OU in 1993. He has been very actively involved in education of medical students, residents, as well as cardiology fellows. at OU since joining OU. He's the recipient of several teaching awards at OU, including Stanton L. Young Master Teacher Award in 1999, OU Regents Award for Superior Teaching in 2007, Edgar Young Lifetime Teaching Achievement Award in 2010. This is only to name a few. He has been pretty consistently the award winner for the best teacher multiple years in a row. He's also very active in the ACC, both at the state as well as the national levels. He was the ACC governor for Oklahoma between 2005 to 8. His contributions as an educator was recognized again by multiple awards at every institution he has been at. And the more notable awards recently are the Gifted Educator Award from ACC in 2015, Lennec Master Clinician Award of AHA in 2017, and he's also a Master of American College of Physicians in 2002. Some of his more recent publications are very, very interesting, and especially the ones about academic advancement in the current era, multimodality imaging training for general and advanced cardiology fellowships, mentorship. He's done being a great mentor. He's also talked about the landscape of mentorship and its effect on success in cardiology. And more importantly, physician wellness in academic cardiovascular medicine that is really crucial for all of us. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Dr. Shivram to give us the grand rounds that we are all waiting to hear.
Thank you. Let me go ahead and share the screen again. First of all, let me thank you for not only for the kind introduction, but for the invitation to speak to you today. This is an area that obviously is very important to us in academic institutions, as well as training our fellows to take on the rigors of what comes past fellowship. So my talk is titled Promoting Wellness and Preventing Burnout in Cardiovascular Trainees and Academic Faculty. I do not have any disclosures. We will have two learning objectives for today's session. We will review the current literature on physician burnout and wellness, and we will also discuss various options to prevent and mitigate burnout in cardiovascular trainees and academic faculty. I was a program director up until about 7 years ago. I'm not a program director at this time. I do have an experience of being a cardiovascular fellowship program director for close to 22, 23 years. So I come to this topic to have this conversation with you with a fair amount of frontline experience. So before we get started, let's do a small exercise. Think of someone that you know professionally, not at home or within your friend circle, within your profession here where you are, or somewhere else that you may have met over the period of time that you've been a student or a practicing physician, who seems not to ever suffer from burnout. And then try to think of what, in your opinion, makes them seemingly immune to burnout. So take about 15 seconds to think about that. And then I will come back to it if time permits. And maybe one of you can monitor the chat box answers if that's possible. All right. Now I'm going to start with two stories, and they are both not made up stories, they're actual stories. I've read recently a lot that says that every talk goes better if you tell a story. So I'm going to tell you, or very briefly, two stories. Now, this is Dr. Padmavati. I don't know how many of you actually know about her. She is credited with being the first woman cardiologist in India, which is in itself is very laudable. But something that appeals to me even as much or even a little bit more is that she lived 103 years. She was born in 1917 and she passed away in 2020 due to COVID. And during that entire time, she was active professionally throughout her entire career. Her achievements during that period of time in India are just too numerous to count. But I will tell you remarkable story about that, and you can read about that at the European Society of Cardiology's website, that she became a fellow of ESC, or European Society of Cardiologists, when she was 90 years old. Now, talk about someone who continued to achieve over her entire life and never felt like she was burnt out or she wanted to quit what she was doing. Now, the other story that I want to share is very up close in our own university, Dr. Benjamin Sherlock. Now, I do not know if our audience today includes anyone who is an electrophysiologist. Dr. Ben Sherlock is a basic scientist. He is a PhD. He has been affiliated with the University of Oklahoma since 1970s, I believe. He is now 91 years old, and he has an office down from my office about 6-7 doors down the hallway. She still comes to work 3 to 4 days a week. And if you didn't know too much about his contribution to the field of electrophysiology, he described his potential for the first time. He didn't do it. He did not do it when he was at OU, but when he was still in New York. And he's truly an EP icon. And his first publication from 1969 that described how to record his potential was, in circulation. Ben is always full of life. He's one of my favorite people here on campus. And even now when I ask him, how are things going? And he always says, I'm having so much fun. And he also shared the story that in 1969, when his landmark publication was submitted to circulation, it was actually rejected by all the reviewers. And I cannot recall, or I don't remember who the editor of circulation was. The editor really kind of put aside all the reviewers and published it. What a bold step and a great story. So he's someone that I can think of that has never shown any signs of burnout. Now, I'm sure each one of you either know or know of someone who falls into the same tradition of high achieving, consistent, finding joy in their work in your own sphere. Okay, I know there is so little new information, breaking news, as I sometimes joke, that I can provide to you about burnout. Most of us know what burnout is, but I will go over some brief commentary so that we will have our post-round discussion more focused. WHO has defined burnout as an occupational hazard. It results from excessive workplace stress, and it's characterized by emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, which means we really don't care too much about what we are doing at work. And it's very often associated with a feeling of dissatisfaction with personal accomplishments. Now, burnout and reduced satisfaction with work-life integration frequently coexist. Now, we are all concerned about how our work intersects with our outside work life, friends, family, and so on and so forth. So burnout and work-life imbalance is very often things that run together. Now, this slide is also no breaking news. We all know that. Various studies have shown that maybe up to 25% of cardiologists and fellows in training are affected by burnout. So it's fairly prevalent. Now, if you look at some of the studies that did not use validated techniques for establishing burnout, the numbers were actually close to 50%, but it's probably not 50%, it is less than that. Some groups are very highly prone to burnout, particularly mid-career, women professionals, underrepresented groups, members of the LGBTQ plus communities. And there is also some evidence to show that burnout is more common in US cardiologists compared to Asian cardiologists in Asia. Now, I put a star in here because the reference for that particular point is not the two references that I have listed here. So before I proceed further, I wanted to double check. Can you see my pointer?
Yes, Dr. Shivram.
Thank you. All right. So there is quite a lot of literature in the last 10 years or that nearabouts from American College of Cardiology, which has taken a great deal of interest and initiative in defining burnout, come out with potential solutions for burnout, and so on and so forth. And this has stemmed from partly the quadruple aim that ACC now adopts. Originally, it was a tripartite aim, and then it became triple aim, became a quadruple aim because we included clinician well-being in it. The other being very obvious, improve patient experience, lower cost of care, and improve population health. And I particularly like the schematic diagram on the right side of the screen because it shows where burnout meets mental well-being. By the way, I'm actually a big fan of movies, and you'll see here and there some obvious or oblique reference to movies, so this is a ripoff from When Harry Met Sally. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember that movie. So the ideal state would be no burnout and optimum mental well-being. That's what we aspire to be. But unfortunately, in any system, there will be very few people who are blessed with that, their state being in the green box. The two other boxes are, the yellow and the orange boxes show that those folks, their colleagues, or some of us who are not burnt out, but we have low level of mental well-being versus high level of mental well-being. So the brown box indicates someone who is still coping, resilience, grit. There are so many terminologies that are used in the literature about burnout and well-being. And the ones that we most worry about are the ones who are burnt out and distressed state. So basically, it seems to me that the take-home message from this slide is that burnout is common. Situations that are leading to burnout is common, but people sometimes cope and sometimes they don't, So our goal would be to have everyone in the green box and no one in the red box. Okay, so this summarizes some of the expert opinion about factors that influence burnout. Things that clinicians, whether they are practicing or in training, experience that lead to burnout. Workload and job demands, and just about everybody has felt this acutely for a long time. And recently, since the COVID pandemic, you are expected to do more and more demands from the job. Low efficiency and resources. I put that into low personal efficiency. I myself feel like I'm not someone who can get work done at a very rapid pace because oftentimes I'm mired in details that some people would say doesn't really make an impact on patient outcome, but I do not know how not to be in that mode. The other more important inefficiencies in the system, and we can talk about that. It'll be different if you are a clinical professional versus a research professional or a hybrid professional, or someone who does a lot of administration like a chairman of department and so on. Now, a very important item that keeps coming up all the time is lack of autonomy or control over work, So we are all, as human beings, value and cherish the ability to control our destiny. So when we lose that, it becomes actually, over a period of time, a very important stressor that leads to burnout, So while superficially everybody would agree that, yeah, we can see that this is an issue, how to fix that is much more complicated, and I will deal with that in a few minutes. And if you are a fellow in training and attending this session, you need to keep in mind that control over work or autonomy, that includes flexible schedules, being off for extended periods of time, they come with their own very unique, complicated abilities to operationalize for the system that we work for, okay? Now, I'm certainly not taking any side here. I'm just giving you my opinion as I see it. Social support and community at work. Lack of social support is certainly something that either triggers or aggravates burnout. Alignment with organizational values, very important, so we take up a job or a field, and over a period of time, we discover that what we thought the field was about is not really, not so in terms of its values. Work-life integration, but most importantly, finding meaning in work. Now, the word joy is my word here. I don't think it has been used in the articles that I read, at least in the position papers. Joy is more than just, I don't know, pleasure. It's really a state of mind that is true enlightenment, where you feel like I could do this endlessly for, in a day, or endlessly over month after month. So we'll talk about that, how to find that magic potion for joy. So this is taken from one of the ACC articles. I am going to provide you with a little reference list at the end. These are professional and personal ramifications of drivers of burnout and strategies to address the clinician's well-being. Okay. Oops, sorry, I went back. All right. So why do institutions care about burnout? So obviously there's been quite a lot of energy and expenditure invested in studying this problem at many of the universities, and certainly our institution does that. I don't have any doubt that your own institution does that. There are several ramifications of burnout. Reduced quality of care to patients. So we are, at the end of the day, here to serve our patients. So burnt out care providers, whatever their job is in terms of real contact with patients, they don't do a good job if they are not satisfied, if they don't find some satisfaction or joy. Increased medical errors, very important, so error-free milieu for both the clinician and for learners is a very important goal. Decrease patient satisfaction. We all get our own institutional patient surveys and about patient satisfaction, and unhappy, burnt out caregivers will not get good patient satisfaction surveys. Decrease productivity, that affects ourselves. When we are burnt out, we spend so much time in limbo, using our energy in non-productive pursuits or ruminations. Increased turnover. People quit. It has been a very important stressor for institutions since COVID. It has still not recovered. So institutions have a vested interest in keeping their workforce healthy and happy. Increased cost to replace clinician. We talk to chairs of medicine or chairs of sections, they would say it takes so much money to engage in a search, interview potential candidates, recruit them. So to retain high quality healthcare workers is more cost effective than trying to recruit from outside. Increased alcohol and substance abuse, broken relationships, depression, and the worst of all, suicide. They're all things that affect the provider, clinician, or fellow. But in a larger sense, it affects the whole institutions because we all have a work family. I have a tremendously affectionate work family, and it will be very painful if something really less than great happens to me, to my work family. Okay, so in the last maybe 5 years, particularly during the COVID pandemic, some new terminologies came up in the discussion and literature about burnout. One of them is moral injury. Moral injury is an original term I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Was something that was first applied to soldiers who sometimes had to do things in the course of battle that they did not agree with morally, but they had to do it. So during COVID pandemic, not being able to care for patients adequately because of the obvious reasons that we all know and have revisited multiple times in the last 4 years. So now I believe that the term moral injury became very popular because one way to take care of burnout or prevent it would be to make ourselves more resilient. That means, we are tougher, we know how to handle stress. But then a lot of people started to feel like resilience is something that kind of pushes aside institutional responsibility for improving processes so that there will not be any burnout. So moral injury was to turn the apparent blame from the provider by using the term resilient to something a little more noble. We can argue on either side whether all burnout stressors are qualified to be termed as moral injury. Some of them are, some of them may not be, okay? Now, the other thing that I won't have a lot of time to talk about today is how do you measure burnout? So what we know now is that to ask doctors, nurses, pharmacists, or fellows in training, are you burnt out, and to get a binary answer, yes or no, or very bad to not at all, is not good enough. So most respected burnout studies use something called the Maslach inventory. It's been around since I think about 30, 40 years. It's, you can actually, if you don't know what it is about, you can actually spend some time looking at it. So it basically asks a number of questions that are not direct, are you burnt out or not? But at the end, depending on your score, the inventory gives you a qualified term as to, burnt out or not, So I've taken a bunch of Maslach inventories like many of you have, or all of you have. Now, it does ask you, thinking over the past 2 weeks or several days, how would you answer this question? My worry is that, and I have not discussed it with an expert in burnout measurements, is whether everyone spends enough time when answering those questions over the past several days as the survey demands us. When I do it, it's usually what happened to me in the last 10 minutes that makes me answer this way or that way. So basically, my point is that the tools that measure burnout may be less than ideal. And I am saying this as not an expert, but as someone in the crowd. But my opinion does indeed matter. Okay. Now we're going to pivot and talk a little bit about the unique drivers of burnout in academic medicine. Now, I had the privilege of working with a bunch of very, very talented, imaginative colleagues to create a document that was published in Circulation 2 years ago. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about how the academic faculty have unique stressors that are different from the faculty, people in private practice. So the credit for this very nicely done diagram it doesn't go to me, it actually goes to one of the members in the work group, okay? So I'm going to take these factors separately, academic factors and clinical factors. Now, if you're in the considering academic factors, promotion deadlines is something that is very stressful. Many universities have different dwell time to go from instructor to assistant professor to associate professor. And so unless you have a very good mentoring system in the institution, this can be stress-inducing. Now, the expectations for academic promotion, academic productivity, things that you need to do to satisfy the institutions or universities' guidelines or criteria for promotion may be unclear to excessive, that one may feel not being able to do it in time. These often clash with clinical and didactic teaching responsibilities. And then we are also expected to take part in committee work at the university level and hospital level and college level. So all of them add to unique stressors to the academic faculty. So if you contrast this with someone in private practice, certainly all of the bullet points except the last one may be non-existent, because you may be expected to work in certain hospital committees, but you don't get promoted, you don't have any teaching responsibilities, and so on. Moving forward, clinical factors that lead to unique burden in academic jobs. Clinical load. Most of the universities now adopt a RVU model, which basically means there is a fixed salary, but then you get to take home more money if you work more, produce more RVUs. We are more often expected to do clerical tasks like, ordering tests and this and that. And it may be even more of a burden at the fellow level. High case complexity. Not all fields are similar. For example, I'm not a heart failure cardiologist, but I certainly do feel like they have very complex cases, critical care cardiology, compared to some other fields. I won't name them. Now, we are all stressed by the reduced time with patients because we all went into medicine because we enjoy caring for patients and their families, reduce administrative time, things that we have to do to generate reports, take care of patient notes, and so on. And then there is widespread belief that the compensation doesn't match what we expect we are worth, okay? Now, many academic faculty are in the physician educator track or clinician educator track. I'm in that track, but I joined academics more than 3 decades ago. Things were different then. Now, lack of formal education training is a very important point that is mentioned by many people in the clinician educator track. You are in charge of fellowship, or you're an associate program director, or you are in charge of the clinical and translational science program, but you don't really know how to develop that curriculum, how to develop metrics that to look at effectiveness, and so on. Education metrics are still evolving, so most of us do not have any expertise in that. We all feel that we don't have enough protected time to devote to that. For example, if I am a junior faculty and I want to obtain a degree in a master's in education, do I have the time? Do I have the bandwidth personally and professionally to do that? And often there is no infrastructure support. Now, many universities have what's known as an Academy of Teaching Scholars. This is a group of like-minded people interested in education. Like we have one at OU, and I do not know the status at your university. You probably do something very similar to that. So moving along, the physician scientist, so every university needs clinician scientists, not the basic scientists, not the bench scientists. So these are the folks that make translational science possible, an idea that was tested in animal models and that becomes a reality in clinical medicine. So most physician scientists, when they start out, they are still expected to do quite a bit of clinical coverage till they have enough research funding to write their own ticket. Funding is very competitive and don't have protected time or mentorship, and also research support, statistician, and things like that. So physician scientists are unique. I'm not sure if they are more stressed than clinician educator, but I wouldn't know because I've never been a physician scientist. Now, many young faculty and academics are tasked with building new clinical programs, new maybe advanced heart failure program, or mechanical circulatory support program, or women in heart center, and so on. So in order for those program building, one needs a little sense of business. Where are patients to that new program going to come from? Where are they going currently? How do you attract them to the new program that you're going to build it? What kind of infrastructure support do you need? How long would it take to recoup the initial investment, and so on? So, at one point in our fellowship program, we used to instruct our fellows on the basics of a business plan, because I've always felt that a very important reason for disenchantment in the first job for new fellows taking their first job is they wanted to start a new program that they are trained in, but they didn't know how to actually structure the program, and they just got devastated. All right. So something that happens all the time, and I myself have been a perpetrator of this mistake, is the tendency for us to feel like I am stressed out, someone else ought to pick up the slack. And I know I'm not, that's like a human nature to feel like someone else should actually help. So I'm not an administrator. I never run a department or a section. So I do not know the intricacies of this, but in many ways it is my strength because I'm not entrenched in any of these camps. But I just want you to look at this slide. It's titled Who Else is Burnt Out? I could have called it Who Else is Not Burnt Out? The answer is actually few others. For example, nurses burn out. I really don't know how old this the statistics in the slide are, but that doesn't really matter. It cannot be any better than this. 1 in 3 nurses are burnt out. 2 out of 5 units are short-staffed for nurses. More than half of nurses report excessive workloads and fatigue, and half of the nurses think they don't have any time to spend with their patients. Now, the advanced care providers, practice providers, a lot of physician assistant burnout and depression, pharmacists, very high report of burnout. So I would just suggest to your consideration that the chance that our burnout at workplace will be mitigated by, moving our responsibility to another team member is not very likely at the administration level. And I honestly appreciate that as long as I'm not at the receiving end of a bad news like that. So the solutions will have to be very global. And as I move towards the last few slides, I feel like, much of the solution may have to come from within ourselves because I think we have to learn how to be a little more resilient than we have traditionally allowed ourselves to be. I know very well that this may be not an opinion that many of you share, but hear me out. Now, we did a few years ago, right at the cusp of COVID, a burnout study of Cardiovascular Fellowship Program administrators. I created a little group within ACC for program administrators. I'm actually very fond of that group. So the main message was that burnout is not exclusive to physicians alone. Program directors report a lot of burnout. Program administrators do. For example, anonymous post-COVID online survey showed that 76% of the administrators were burnt out. Half of them thought they would quit the job in the previous year. Many of them were managing more than 5 training programs. So be nice to your program coordinators. They are pretty stressed out. And then here is something that we can all do to help them feel better. They differed in their support from leadership. Most of them actually thought their own PDs were very nice to them, 53%, I guess. But they didn't feel the same about institutions at large. So expressing some understanding and sympathy goes a long way. That's the point. All right. So what can the institutions do? So I think the solution to this problem, in my opinion, comes from 2 sources, at the institution level and from ourselves. So let's actually talk about burnout mitigation and wellness promotion strategies for the institution. You have to assess the amount of burnout. And, even though we know that it's not going to be low, I think doing such a survey shows acknowledgement of the problem within your working workforce, which goes actually a long way. I don't, it's much better than not having an assessment at all. An organizational culture of well-being, so stressing the importance and providing various perks that are not super expensive, like health club membership and so on and so forth. Now, improving practice efficiency is actually critical, so it is going to be a multi-pronged, large undertaking, and it will be a slow process, but to have a beginning is, in my opinion, very important. Now, we have to develop methods of improving personal resiliency. Now, a very common association with burnout is mental health conditions. Some of the literature does say that you have to parse out severe anxiety and depression from burnout. They are different. But we must be on the lookout both at the institutional level as peer level for colleagues that seem to be not doing well mental health wise, and destigmatize, assuming, approaching appropriate venues for care. And we should also try to influence healthcare policy. Okay, so I'm going to come back to this slide that was done, that I showed earlier. Drivers of burnout: workout demands, efficiency, control over work, social support and community to work, alignment with organizational values, work-life integration, and meaning in work. I put the red arrows in areas where I think institution will not be responsible for it. For example, our social support, how we create both our work family as well as community outside work, how we integrate work and life. Meaning in work is a very, very high value objective. The joy in work, meaning in work, purpose in work. I don't think any of the institutions can help us with those. Maybe you see more to it than I do, but now I want to spend about a few minutes about some of the emerging issues regarding what some people consider exclusive focus on wellness. Now, I would like to recommend to you this article that was published just a few months ago in Annals Internal Medicine by Dr. K et al. Dr. K is a faculty member at the University of Wisconsin. She's not a cardiologist. It is a brilliant 2-page article. So basically, Dr. K and her colleagues say that wellness is focused inwards. It's about how I stay well, how I find joy in my work, how I learn how to not to be stressed by outside influences that I cannot control. Professionalism faces outward. So comparing the two, Dr. K says one might acknowledge how aspects of wellness and professionalism may seemingly contradict one another, and how unprofessional act may be rationalized as wellness. In the little perspective that they write, they describe, and I don't want to take away from your reading pleasure of that 2-page article. A medical student calls in sick. In that process, their colleague will have to take over responsibilities and not being able to scrub in a surgical case that the med student was looking forward to. Later in the day, the med student finds the colleague another med student who called in sick in a restaurant. And then the whole debate is the calling in sick was justified because it was part of wellness. So that's actually an interesting dilemma. And what Dr. K suggests is another concept called flourishing, not wellness, but flourishing. So flourishing is different, and the reference in this slide is one of 2 original articles that describes it. This is again from the Dr. K article in Annals. Flourishing is a state in which 5 aspects of patient's life are doing well. One is happiness and life satisfaction, physical and mental health, meaning and purpose. So up until now, those 3 values are those that are directed inwards. Next is character and virtue, close personal and social relationships. So basically, what they are doing, I believe, in Wisconsin is stressing this concept very early in their medical students so that, it's important that you should be in a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. At the same time, we should not lose the tenets of professionalism that guide our commitment to being a doctor or a nurse or anyone involved in patient care. Respect, compassion, and integrity, and a responsive to the needs of patients and society that should supersede self-interest. Now, one could argue, how much of professionalism is pitted against wellness? Should it be 50-50, 60-40? But in the case that I described from that article, the professionalism was not 10%, it was close to 0%. Okay, so I'm going to do a little bit of uncalled for propaganda here. We are going to have Dr. K, Dr. Pavlik, and Rafalo talk to us this Thursday on our grand rounds about flourishing. When I approached them, I had no idea about my talk with you guys. So wrapping up a couple more slides, wellness at the FIT level. I would suggest aim at work-life integration, not work-life balance. Balance says that work and life should be 50-50. It's never a perfect balance, especially as you are building a practice, trying to get very good at what you're learning. Work has to be hang lower in the balance compared to life. Develop and maintain a sense of gratitude. This is so important. Grateful people are happier. Something Gotta Give, another movie reference. Compromise is the key between learning demands and outside pressures. And so often this requires not just the FITs themselves, but their larger group of friends and family and so on. Exercise regularly, meditate, yoga is very helpful, eat healthy, stay away from social media when you're able, and I'm not someone who is able to do that. And always be a reliable member of work family. You need to be someone that people that you work with should feel like they can rely on you, okay? Now, this is one of my favorite photos. It's black and white. It's from the Great Depression. This shows actually a migrant woman, not, this is from migration within the United States in search of work and so on. So this is actually the face of need. Compared to that, most of us have lots and lots to feel grateful about. I know there are some, I think University of Michigan, Dr. Eagle starts his rounds every day by having everyone mention something that they are grateful for each time. That's what he has told me. I also want to put in a plug for this movie, Society of Snow. I don't know if you have seen that. It's one of the movies that came out last year, nominated for Best Foreign Film. This is the real life, based on a real life story of a bunch of youngsters from Uruguay that crashed on the Andes in a glacier, and they were stranded for close to more than 40 days, and they survived, and one of them actually later became a pediatric cardiologist. That's actually how much resilience can take the human spirit too. So in conclusion, burnout is widely prevalent in healthcare team members, including faculty and fellows. Both institutional and individual level interventions and changes are needed. Focus on wellness and burnout mitigation should not result in unprofessional behavior. So we should focus on flourishing. Destigmatization and early recognition of the need for counseling are important. So here are some references. This will be in your, I think it will be available to you. And thank you. Any comments? So this is our campus during last fall.
Dr. Shivram, it was a phenomenal grand rounds. Thank you very much for that. We absolutely needed to hear this. I'm going to start off opening with a couple of comments. It was very interesting for me to hear about the personal resiliency and how, especially when it comes to burnout mitigation, it is really difficult to teach it to people. What do you think we should have some active teaching about personal resiliency? And there are also, second part to this is there are so many intangible stressors that our fellows and faculty experience during their everyday life. Some of it could be internal, some of it can be external. And how do you actually discuss these with your faculty as well as the fellows?
So I don't have any magic bullets for that, but I do have some opinions. I think, first of all, we have to be kind. Okay, so not only kind to ourselves, to our patients, our colleagues, but also people who manage us. So it is my feeling that when I go with a demand or a request to someone who has power to grant that demand, it's that person's responsibility to listen to my viewpoint. And if they are not able to accommodate me, explain why that is. Okay. So if that happens in a fair manner, then I'm not going to imagine why I was declined. I personally know this because, not everything that I preached here today, I practice. I'm still working on it. So a lot of times we know something that was very clear, denied a promotion or denied an award or was spoken some unkind words. That's a fact. But then what we do is to actually weave a story as to why that happened. And I don't mind saying this. A lot of times, people that we go to, our friends or our family, are enablers in creating that story. So if someone comes to me with a bad experience, the first thing I will say is that, okay, let's think about it. Let's find out all the facts. And let's not tweet about it today or write a nasty email or talk to someone who has no power to make any change, like, someone who works in the same office or same laboratory, so on and so forth. So restraint is kind of important. It is, there is something very satisfying about exploding. And we see lots of bad examples of explosion of emotions these days. So, and then the other fallacy or misnomer that I see is that when you confront someone who did something to us, you will know why they did it. I don't think so. Let's say I was denied a promotion. I can go to my boss, but he's not going to, or she is not going to share with me all the details because some of them may be confidential. So that's where we have to focus away from something that is irritating to something that is comforting. It may be playing with children because I love children, or just helping someone else, something like that. So you need a trusted a friend or advisor who is not necessarily going to agree with you all the time. So that's a short answer. I know it's a woefully inadequate answer.
No, thank you very much for that. Dr. East has a question. Do you think implementation of sabbaticals for academic physicians would help alleviate burnout?
Yeah, certainly. So in order to get a sabbatical, I don't know what every university's requirement is. You have to be fairly senior. So I do feel like the mid-career slump, which was actually one of the findings of the ACC survey, can be helped by sabbatical that helps us teach new skills or work in a certain different environment. And then realizing that, things that we thought were not good at our place is better than where you went to do the sabbatical, So, and it also takes away from the rat race for a period of time. So certainly, I don't know how easy it is at Rutgers. In many universities, getting a sabbatical is complicated. I've been myself on a mini sabbatical several years ago, and I will tell you one of the unintended consequences that I was greeted. When you come back, you realize that your place in the grand scheme of things at your own parent institution is slightly changed. Because during the time when we are away on sabbatical, they're not going to check with you each time when someone is hired or when someone's office is moved and so on and so forth. So, I'm reminded of a book from way back in the 80s called Who Moved My Cheese? Like when you come back, things are not the same. When I took a sabbatical, I was still a program director. When I came back, the fellows didn't bond with me that year as much as I wanted them to. It didn't affect their education, but personally, it was hurtful for me. I got over it.
Well, there is a comment from Dr. Panton. I think the biggest stressor in our environment is so many physicians who do not love what they do. In addition, several stress generators in our environment stem from several factors. Having a me mentality as opposed to a team mentality, having stated institutional values that do not translate into executed ones, ignoring local talent, not having clear rules that match applied processes, etc. What are your thoughts on his comment?
I can relate to that. It's a very complicated question. Now, the me versus the group,
Team.
team. I think it seems to me that just like what they say about anger, that mentality may be originating from insecurity rather than bravado. I am not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist. The only thing that's going for me is that I've been around educational institutions for a long period of time. So if possible, I would ignore them, not be in their
presence
victory.
right
Yeah.
there.
So, this is also one of the reasons why 360 evaluations are very important in institutions. Like we have them in fellowship training. Fellows evaluate faculty, faculty evaluate fellows. But I think at the institutional level, there are some satisfaction, like employee satisfaction surveys and so on, but not 360-degree evaluations. So I know I'm not directly answering your question because it may be very institution dependent. And the only thing I would say is that people who tend to act like they are very autocratic. They may be much more insecure than we think they are.
I feel as though there needs to be a lot of looking inwards that you need to do as a physician. So that is actually a fantastic point that you've touched on, to be able to just look within yourself. One of the other things is, Rutgers has instituted academic RVUs for some of the non-clinical work that we have to do as faculty, and that has been embraced by many of the faculty. It's a newer introduction to us, and I'm hoping that it's going to be very successful. So that's one of the other things that recently happened at our institution. Coming to the 360 reviews, I have moved here about 8 months ago, and there was a lot of talk about faculty actually grading the DOM chairs as well as the divisional chairs. So that actually took a life on its own, and people were running with it. So I don't know what happened after that.
Okay.
I'm looking to see if there are any more. Is there data regarding amongst locum physicians? Just curious if the geographic mobility is a burden or a perk. That's a fantastic question.
Yeah, very interesting questions. I can only, in terms of burnout, yeah. I think it depends on the person. Some people like travel, some people like the mix of various type of hospital setups. And I think, most of us may also feel like, you can always take some pain for short periods of time, but not for years and years and years. So, and then locum jobs come with some perks, and so on and so forth. But on the negative side is disruption from, your own roots. For personally, for me, it would be not very rewarding to have a patient population that I don't follow sequentially. So same is the case with hospitalists or emergency room physicians. It depends on one's mindset. I don't know whether there is any data that has looked at the impact of locum jobs on burnout per se.
This has been extremely educational. Do you have any lasting piece of advice for all of us? If it is going to be in just a couple of sentences, I understand how lucky we all are as physicians. And I think we need to be reminded pretty regularly about that. But if you have any words for us.
Yeah, we are privileged, and we are privileged not by virtue of our financial status compared to many of our, brothers and sisters in the community, the nation. We are also privileged by the trust that our patients place in us, at critical times. At times when they know nothing about us. So that certainly is a privilege. And we have all gone into medicine with a love for what that privilege means, so we should not actually forget about that. And we should really not listen to the chatter in the, it's fine for us to believe in something that most of the group doesn't seem to be believing in. So it definitely is a privilege, and we need to be absolutely grateful. So did you come out with anyone that you know that is full of joy at work?
I did. I was actually thinking about the question that you have asked. I was very lucky to have worked with two people who made a huge impact. One is Kanu Chatterjee, who has never lost his temper, was always joyful, was also extremely smart, and more importantly, extremely kind. The second person was the person who hired me at my last job, Dr. Bono. He is one of those extremely kind people who took all of us under his wing. And so those are the two that come to mind, who don't appear to be really showing any signs of burnout. They were so joyful with everything they have done. So I'm grateful to have worked with both of them and learned from both of them.
Okay.
Once again, thank you so much for this fantastic talk. And I'm sure all of our paths will cross again at many of the upcoming meetings. And have a wonderful evening, everybody. And if you haven't finished your quiz, please go ahead and answer that. And Dr. Shivram, we have a full house. We have 60 people who are actively listening and absorbing everything you taught us today. So thank you again.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
You have a wonderful day and week.
Bye.
Bye.